Welcome back everyone, here we are again with the next 10 titles in my top 100 JRPGs of all time. This time, we're starting at number 80 and counting down to 71. If you missed out on the other videos, you can check them out in the details below. As always, a bit of housekeeping. This is just my personal list and it will be a lot different to yours, but I'd love to know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Is something too high? Is something too low? Leave me a comment. Before we get into it, if you got any enjoyment out of this video, hitting that like button, the super thanks or commenting would help me out a lot. You could also sub for more RPG content, including the next installment of this top 100. Any support at all would be greatly appreciated. I also have full reviews out for most of these titles, so check out my previous videos if you're interested. Alright, let's get into it. Fire Emblem Engage is the latest title in Nintendo's flagship strategy RPG series. This series is best known for its addictive tactical turn-based grid battles, and that is exactly what Fire Emblem Engage has to offer. The game begins with the choice of a guy Alira or a girl Alira, both of which have absolutely wild visual designs. In fact, many of the characters have absolutely whack designs, and all of these years later, I still can't decide if this is a good thing or a bad thing. Now, Alira is the divine dragon, and after sleeping for 1,000 years, he wakes up to save the world from the evil fell dragon who had previously been sealed away. But the story or the characters are not the reasons why you would want to play Engage. To be honest, the game is a bit disappointing in this regard. Fire Emblem Engage deserves a spot in this list thanks to the strategic combat, which is better than it's ever been. At the start of each battle, you can select and position up to 12 characters on the battlefield. There are loads of characters from many different classes to choose from, with several optional recruits too. The core gameplay is just what you'd expect from a Fire Emblem game. Engage's major new addition to the battle system is Emblem Rings, and this is what gives it the edge over previous titles. By equipping an emblem ring to your character, you'll gain the power of past heroes. This includes stat increases, passive skills, unique weapons, and engage attacks, which can change the tide of battle. Now, these past heroes are actually characters from previous Fire Emblem games such as Ike, Marth, and Roy. Choosing which character to equip each ring to and when to use these engage skills and attacks in battle is where a lot of the strategy lies. Fire Emblem Engage may not be the best game in the series, but it is absolutely worth playing for its incredible tactical gameplay, making it more than worthy of a spot on the list. Lufia 2 Rise of the Sinistrals is a prequel to the original Lufia title and follows Maxim, a young monster hunter from the town of El Cid. This game has just about everything you'd expect from an old school retro JRPG, with a few small additions that make it its own. The game is set 99 years before the events of the first and explains the origins of the war between mankind and a group of gods called the Sinistrals. The story begins when Maxim hears of a mysterious red light that has plunged into the sea. On his journey to investigate, he meets a woman named Iris who tells him that his destiny is to confront and defeat the Sinistrals. This story is a fairly stock standard save the world from an unknown evil kind of plot, but the adventure from start to finish is just so much fun. One of the standout features here is the heavy focus on puzzles within dungeons. Each dungeon has a plethora of puzzles that require the use of various tools such as arrows, bombs, and grappling hooks. While these are never too difficult to figure out, there are a load of hidden areas that give great rewards, so searching high and low will be worth your while. The simple battle system borrows from the already successful turn-based mechanics found in most games of the era. The first major consideration is the abilities granted by your current equipment. I really loved this as it requires some careful equipment management. You won't simply be equipping weapons and armor with the highest stats, as sometimes their associated abilities may not be as useful. The other unique mechanic is the inclusion of capsule monsters, and these little guys fight alongside you in battle. There are 7 of these monsters in total, but each can then be evolved into 5 additional forms. These monsters cannot be directly controlled like regular party members, but they do have their own sets of abilities that evolve as they do, making them very useful in battle. Lufia 2 is a title that doesn't seem to be talked about too often, but is definitely worth playing if you want to scratch that retro style itch. The fourth title in the Final Fantasy series, originally titled FF2 in the US, was first released in 1991 and since then has received loads of different versions and even a complete remake for the DS in 2007. Most recently, we've been treated to the Pixel Remaster version, which provides updated visuals, a re-recorded soundtrack, and loads of quality of life features, and this is the footage that you're seeing now. At the time of its release, Final Fantasy IV was met with critical acclaim, and many people still hold it as their favourite Final Fantasy game. So, what does it do so well? The major difference between FF4 and its predecessors is its focus on the story. Previously, we had some pretty basic narratives, and the characters that filled the world had very little depth. This all changed in Final Fantasy IV with its deeper story and memorable cast of characters. You play the role of the Dark Knight Cecil, captain of the Barren Kingdom's Red Wings. After the king orders him to travel to a town to steal the water crystal at the cost of innocent lives, Cecil begins to question the king's morality, and this is where the journey begins. FF4 is not a happy game. There is a lot of death and many emotional moments. Cecil has to deal with a lot, so much more than Fighter did in Final Fantasy I. There really are some great moments here, supported by an outstanding soundtrack, such as when you witness a village burn to the ground, or during some of Rosa and Cecil's emotional conversations with one another. The story is definitely one worth experiencing. The other significant upgrade from previous FF games is the introduction of the active time battle, which became a staple of the series and used in many future entries. Characters would now have to wait for their turn to come around, which can be seen on the gauge next to the character's name. Different actions also have different wait times. For example, physically attacking is instant, while casting a powerful spell may take several seconds. This sense of urgency added a whole new dynamic to battles and forced you to think ahead while your character is waiting for their turn. Final Fantasy IV raised the bar for the series in its focus on storytelling and evolution to the active time battles. They were revolutionary back then and still hold up today, which is why this game deserves a spot in my top 100. Back in 1994, Square released a little RPG on the Super Famicom called Live Alive. Unfortunately, the game was met with disappointing sales and never officially ventured out to the rest of the world. Until 2022 that is, when Live Alive was finally remade in that pretty HD 2D style that we all love. This game is a very different kind of RPG. It's basically a collection of 7 different short stories that range from around 30 minutes to 4 hours in length, each focusing on a different main character in a different time period. These stories all offer something unique with differing genres, structures, and gameplay mechanics, and after you complete them all, additional chapters will unlock to bring all of the characters together. To give you a taste, here's a rundown of the first 7 chapters. First, we have Edo, Japan, where you play as a shinobi sent to infiltrate the enemy stronghold and rescue a prisoner. The story is really light here with a focus on combat and exploration. Next, we have The Distant Future, which is essentially a story-driven space opera inspired by a bunch of different sci-fi films. The present day chapter is easily the shortest of them all and features Masaru Takahara and his journey to be the best fighter in the world. In the prehistoric era, you play the role of a caveman before language was ever a thing. This story unfolds through voiced grunts, sprite animations, and emotive symbols, and this was a really unique way to present the narrative. The Western chapter is another short but sweet story with some beautiful scenery. As you would expect, you play the role of a cowboy who soon gets caught up in a conflict between a small town and an outlaw gang. The gameplay here involves defending the town from an incoming attack. In the near future, we have Akira's chapter, and this one has it all. Storytelling, exploration, dungeon crawling, and grinding. And finally, we have Imperial China. Here, you play the role of a Shifu, who is an old martial arts master who has learned everything there is to know about his art. Now, his only desire is to find a student so his legacy can live on. Regardless of which chapter you choose, the combat's fundamentals will be the same. Your characters and the enemies are placed on a 7x7 grid, each with their own action gauge. This gauge will increase for both allies and enemies whenever you initiate movement around the field. If you stay completely still, nothing will happen. If you move around repetitively without attacking, the enemy will hit you many times, provided you're within their range. The strategy here is to be in the right spot at the right time, and this can be a lot of fun. Live Alive is a very simple yet solid RPG experience, and for what it sets out to do, it does a damn good job. There is truly something here for everyone. Super Mario, what a man. Since his first appearance in 1981's Donkey Kong, he has done it all. Soccer, golf, plumbing, racing, and believe it or not, even jumping. In 1996, our boy Mario thought it was about time to take a break from his usual pursuits, and with the help of the legendary RPG juggernaut Squaresoft, decided to save the world RPG style in Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. This entry on the list is going to include the original game from 1996 and the Switch remake released in 2023. The game starts off with big bad busted up bully Bowser kidnapping Princess Toadstool, with our heroic plumber risking his life to save her. Well, at least that's what happens at the start. It soon becomes apparent that there is an even bigger threat in the world, the Smithy Gang, who are dead set on world domination. It's up to Mario to collect the 7 stars and save the world once again. This story is simple and pretty much what you'd expect from a Mario game. Fun, light-hearted and fun all the way through. It is short and sweet, with the full playthrough of the remake only taking around 12 hours. This is a little less than the original thanks to all of the quality of life improvements such as fast travel. Exploring the colourful world of Mario RPG is one of the most enjoyable parts of the game. I thought it was really cool how the world map replicates the Super Mario World style map, with each town or dungeon being accessible from there. Exploring each area contains a mix of both platforming and typical RPG elements. There are plenty of towns with shops, inns, and loads of NPCs to interact with. Super Mario RPG also features many different mini-games. These are simple yet fun and range from Yoshi racing to falling down a waterfall. Something that has stuck with me all of these years is the turn-based combat system. It is very simple, but what Mario RPG does differently than most other RPGs released around the 90s is the addition of interactivity during attack and defense animations. If you time your button press correctly, you'll dish out more damage, while damage can also be reduced by timing a button press as an attack hits a character. This is a constant challenge due to most enemies' attacks being different, so naturally, learning the enemy's attack animations makes it much easier to defend. With that said, this is one of the easiest RPGs I've ever played in my life, so you could still easily get through the game without doing this. Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars has always been one of the best RPGs on the Super Nintendo, and both the original and the remake are absolutely worth playing today. To be completely honest, back in 2006, Final Fantasy XII was a game that I found really disappointing, especially after loving the previous entries so much. When the Zodiac Age remaster was released for the PS4 in 2017, I thought it was time to give it another go, and I'm happy to say that I enjoyed it a lot more the second time around. The game begins with a street rat named Van deciding it would be a wonderful plan to break into the Royal Palace during a big celebration and steal stuff. Following this string of surprising events, the majority of the story follows the princess, who sets out to put an end to the war and bring her kingdom back to its former glory. And then there's Van, who just kinda tags along. To be honest, this story is something that has never really grabbed me, but that's okay because I had a blast with just about every other aspect of the game. For starters, the large open interconnected locations present a lot to explore and discover, and this was made even better with the removal of random encounters, which was a huge step forward for the series. The battles are also completely different to anything else previously seen in a Final Fantasy game. There is a huge shift to make the battles more action-oriented and ultimately more seamless. You control one character at a time, but can issue commands to your party if needed. When you're not directly controlling your party, they will act based on a list of previously set gambits, which is like a priority list that issues commands based on certain circumstances. This gambit system was such a great way to pre-program your party members, and even after all of these years, few games have done it as well. Then there's the license board system, which differs quite a bit between the original game and the Zodiac Age remaster. In the superior Zodiac Age version, each character can commit to 2 out of 12 jobs, each with their own unique license boards. There is a load of experimentation that can be done here. For instance, you could create a pure support mage by combining a white mage with a time mage, or you could have an offensive white mage that could hold their own in battle by crossing a white mage with a knight. Final Fantasy XII is far from the best Final Fantasy game, but it still has a lot going for it. If you haven't played it yet, definitely give the remaster a go. Who would have thought that we would ever see a crossover of the Shin Megami series and the Fire Emblem series? These two highly successful franchises are the favourites of millions of fans around the world, so developing a game that would please them all? Yeah, that would have been a difficult task. Fortunately, this game is awesome, though far from what you'd expect from a crossover between the two series. To be fair, the game is a lot more Shin Megami-like than Fire Emblem. The biggest Fire Emblem influence is the Mirage characters who confuse with the main cast in battle. Tokyo Mirage Sessions is set in modern Tokyo and tells a generic tale of overcoming a mysterious evil that's causing innocent people to vanish. To combat this threat, Itsuki and his companions travel the Idol Sphere, which is basically another dimension. That all sounds pretty stock standard, right? Well, throw in the Japanese idol scene and you have yourself one hell of a unique JRPG. I mean, you don't just start your journey, you debut. You do everything relating to pop stars and idols, and if this isn't your thing, well, hopefully you can just ignore it, because Tokyo Mirage Sessions is one hell of a fun ride. Let's take the pop star inspired battles for instance. Oh boy, they are so good. The key to victory is creating sessions with your other party members. To do this, you have to unleash an attack that exploits the enemy's weakness. If you don't exploit a weakness, you'll simply unleash a single attack. If you do attack the weakness, this single attack could potentially turn into a chain of 15 plus attacks that also provide a range of bonuses. So you can see the merit here. At the end of the day, yeah, you dance a lot, you sing a lot, but in the end, Tokyo Mirage Sessions is awesome, and I'm so glad it recently escaped Wii U jail and got a much deserved Switch remaster. The E-Series is one of the longest running JRPG series ever, spanning 10 main games and many other spin-offs since 1987. Ys 9 Monstrum Nox provides much of what was great about its predecessors, but throws a new spin on things with the game taking place in a single city. The story, once again, follows the journey of Adol in the prison city of Balduc. Immediately after entering the city, Adol is arrested due to his previous shenanigans and sent straight to the Slammer. During his breakout attempt, a mysterious hooded woman shoots him, turning Adol into a being known as a monstrum, and this is a huge focus of the entire game. The majority of the story involves uncovering the mysteries associated with the monstrums, but also the secrets and conspiracies involved in the prison itself. I thoroughly enjoyed Ys 9's story. There is constant mystery, many surprising reveals, and some awesome moments spread throughout this 50-hour journey. The action-based combat also feels really good. You can run, jump, and roll around with a single character, attacking your enemies with regular attacks. Each character can also equip 4 unique skills at a time, costing varying amounts of SP to use. The other 2 characters in your party can be switched on the fly, which is a good way to exploit enemy weaknesses, as each character's attack is classified as strike, pierce, or slash. The most significant unique addition to the combat is the use of gifts. Each monstrum has some sort of unique ability that can be used in battle, and once you officially recruit them, all characters can use these gifts. Adol's gift, for instance, allows the monstrums to quickly close in on the targeted enemy, while White Cat's ability allows them to climb up walls. When not in battle, you'll spend most of your time traveling around the city of Balduc and working through dungeons. This is made really fun because of these monstrums' gifts, which provide some sort of traversal ability, such as being able to glide or climb all around the giant city. Ys 9 is a solid entry to the series and definitely worth checking out if you're into the action RPG genre. Over the years, there really hasn't been that many moments in video games that have really stuck with me. Unless something is out of the ordinary incredible, I'll probably just forget about it. The introduction to Shadow Hearts is the complete opposite, and I can remember watching it for the first time like it was yesterday. This cinematic sequence features a mysterious man in a top hat firing demons across a train carriage at a young man who proceeds to capture one-handed, and brutally crush its small head in the palm of his hand, splattering blood everywhere. Over 20 years later, this remains one of my favourite opening sequences of all time, and it sets the atmosphere perfectly for what is one hell of a dark ride. The story begins 15 years after its prequel, Kudelka. After being told what to do by a mysterious voice in his head, Yuri proceeds to save a girl named Alice from that guy in a top hat. From here, it's a quest for answers, and much of the game will be focused on uncovering why Alice was kidnapped and the reason behind the mysterious voice. This is a short, relatively small adventure that rarely suffers from pointless diversions. It is also driven by one of my favourite characters of all time, Yuri Hyuga. He is an arrogant, blunt, badass with a heart of pure gold, and these imperfections make him so likable. He can also turn into demons, which would never be a bad thing when applying for the coolest protagonist ever position. Then there's the combat. It is your typical turn-based battle system, but with one genius addition, the Judgment Ring. Every time you select an attack, a circle appears with a set number of orange areas. As the clock hand spins around, you have to press X when it's over these hit areas. Miss one and the attack will completely fail. To take it a step further, these hit areas also have a really small red area at the end of them called strike areas. If you hit one of these, your attacks will do more damage. This is a risk-reward system at its best and makes every single encounter an absolute blast. Shadow Hearts is a dark, mature JRPG that wasn't afraid to run away from the pack and make itself unique, and I love it for this. Triangle Strategy is one of the stupidest video game names that I've ever heard, but what it lacks in its title, it makes up for in what really matters, being a good video game. Developed by Square Enix, Triangle Strategy is an SRPG with a combat system like Final Fantasy Tactics, a story like Game of Thrones, and an art style like Octopath Traveler. How could you go wrong with that combination? Triangle Strategy takes place on the continent of Norzelia 30 years after the Salt Iron War. This war was fought between three nations over the resources salt and iron. You play the role of Serenoa, a member of a high house of Glenbrook, and it doesn't take long for him to get caught up in a new political conflict between nations, all surrounding the trade and monopoly of salt. Triangle Strategy tells a highly engaging political story with some great moments, but I think the most impressive thing about it is the many paths that you can take. There are several key points in the game that require Serenoa to gather his allies to vote on which path they should take moving forward. This is all done through the scales of conviction. Your party members will have their thoughts on what should be done, but as their leader, Serenoa can sway them to a different vote. The decisions that you make are all very significant and will have a huge impact on future events, endings, story battles, and the characters that you can recruit. This scales of conviction system is so effective because I was so invested in the story, which made me really want to see how everything could unfold. But to see everything the game has to offer, you have to play through the story multiple times. When it comes to the gameplay, it is exactly what you'd expect from a strategy RPG, offering it little to set it apart from other titles. Despite the lack of innovation here, the combat is still a lot of fun and also a really good challenge. Also worth mentioning is that the game has just been released on the MetaQuest. I don't own this system, but I am really curious how it would go in VR. If you've given this version a go, let me know in the comments below. And that's all folks, number 80 down to 71 in my top 100 JRPGs of all time. What did you think of this list? Was something too high? Was something too low? Is there anything here you want to play? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to know more about any of these games, I've got full reviews out for most of them, so be sure to check out my channel. This was Hellfire RPGs, thanks for watching. It would help out this channel so much if you could hit that like button, comment or sub for more RPG content coming soon. And of course, the next episode of 70 down to 61 is going to be out soon, so make sure you stay tuned for that. See you next time.